Thank you, dear Professor, and again, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The aim of the presentation today, which I'm going to give, is to give you a bit of an update on what is happening in terms of road safety in the European Union, as well as the latest legislative package of the European Commission, which is known as the third mobility package. I've told you about ETSC, 60 members, and working closely with the European Commission, the member organizations, member states, and all those interested in road safety. This is a snapshot of the members, and obviously you cannot see them all. I can tell you there are 60 of them, and I am delighted that apart from one of the newest, which is the Traffic Safety Agency of the Republic of Srpska, we also have here today representatives of the Slovenian Traffic Safety Agency, of the Serbian Traffic Safety Agency, which are also very committed and very strong members of the ETSC. This slide tells you what we do. Top left is what we do most and best, that is talking to European and national policymakers about transport safety, mainly road safety, and all the rest are logos of various projects which we are running and that deal with performance in safety in the various member states, but we do alcohol, work-related road safety, drug, infrastructure, you name it, and we have it. Let's start with the figures. This is a headline we used last June to say what is the situation in the European Union. 2 passenger planes crash every week on the European Union, killing everybody on board. These are the facts. Unfortunately, a very big number, and if that happened in other transport sector different from the road sector, I am sure that more would be done by all those responsible for road safety to tackle what we would consider an unacceptably high number. And I also wanted to have this slide with the total number in the European Union for 2017, which is indeed unacceptably high. It is more than 25,000. And the European Union has set itself a target to reduce by half the number of road deaths between 2011 and 2020. We started well in the decade, but the last 4 years for which we have data have seen either a small reduction, in one case an increase, in 2 cases stagnation, which means that very likely will be not reaching the 2020 target. This graph tells you how the situation is. The dotted line shows where we should be if we were to be on track to reach the target. The solid line shows that we started very well during the decade, but then the flattening of the curve shows shows this basically, shows that in the last 4 years not enough has been made to reduce the number of road deaths. We have also broken down this for the 32 countries which are part of our PIN project, and again you see the average reduction for the European Union over the first 7 years of the decade has been only 20%, whereas the desired EU 28 progress in order to reach the target should have been 38%. So big distance between the 2 curves, between the 2 horizontal curves, big distance between where we should be and where we are. It also shows that some countries have done great progress in these 7 years. Greece, Estonia, I don't talk about Norway because it's not member of the European Union, so not interested by reaching the target, and Lithuania, which was mentioned before. So some of them are doing well. But what is bad to see is that there are too many countries in yellow and too many countries in red, which means that those who are lagging behind in the reduction, those that will unfortunately contribute to the European Union not reaching the target. Obviously, the fact that you see Greece and Estonia in green here, it doesn't mean that they are the safest countries of the European Union. It means that they are the countries that have done better in reducing the number of road deaths. If we look at the situation in terms of safest or less safe countries, well, you see the safest are in green, and then the more you move towards the red, the less safe is the country. What is bad about this graph is that even if the European Union is only one, actually the road safety situation is different from one country to another. You can be with levels of deaths per million population which are below 20 in some countries, to other countries in red where they are between 71 and 99. And I show you the same situation, this time with a graph. Obviously, the situation has improved again between 2010 2017, but look at the difference between, for example, being in Sweden, in the UK, in Denmark, in Ireland, and the situation for somebody who is living in Romania, who is living in Bulgaria, where notwithstanding being all members of the European Union, the road safety levels are so much worse. And so far, I have only talked about the number of road deaths. We also need to take into account the importance of serious injuries. Up to a few years ago, in the European Union, we didn't even have a definition of a serious injury. So the same casualty could lead somebody to be considered like a seriously injured person in one country, but not in the other, which is quite ironical. But now we have this definition, and this is an estimate of the European Commission, which we believe is a very conservative estimate, if you want, and we would not be surprised if the figure for serious injuries at European level would be substantially higher than this. What is the European Union doing? Well, are they ignoring this? No, they are not, and we are delighted. The Slovenian Commissioner for Transport, Mrs. Violeta Bulc, is very active. She really cares about road safety. She has managed actually to mobilize in March 2017 all the ministers of transport of the various member states to sign what we call the Valletta Declaration, because it was signed in Malta, where the various ministers and the European Commission decided to continue joining forces for reducing road deaths and, for the first time ever, serious injuries also in the decade to come. And as a consequence of this Valletta Declaration, the European Commission came on back in May 2018 with a new proposal published on that very same day by the European Commission, called the Third Mobility Package. What is the Third Mobility Package? Well, 4 instruments. 2 are legislative, 2 are non-legislative, but are, if I can, as important as the non-legislative ones. Without any fear of exaggerating it, when we commented on this Third Mobility Package, we said that if approved as it is, it could be for road safety as important as the adoption of the seat belt. I'll quickly talk about these 4 instruments one at a time. I will start with the first legislative instrument, that is the General Safety Regulation and the Pedestrian Safety Regulation. This concerns vehicle standards, and it's a very important piece of legislation. Why? Because when it comes to vehicle safety, this is what we call an exclusive competence of the European Union, which means that the legislation on vehicle safety is decided in Brussels, and it stops there. It applies then to all the member states of the European Union. So the way a car, a truck will be built in the future will be decided in Brussels, and there is no way that France, Spain, Portugal, Denmark, Germany can change that. They will have to apply it. So a vehicle will be a vehicle construed in such a way in every country of the European Union. And certainly vehicle safety has been very important in the road safety success story of the European Union. Forgot to say that actually the new proposal, the General Safety Regulation, has 15 new measures which will basically tell us how the vehicles of the near future will be built. Obviously, we support as ETSC all of these measures, but we also have a priority list. The most important of this is what we call intelligent speed assistance, and I'll tell you a bit more about that. But we also care about the importance of making sure an alcohol interlock can be retrofitted to any vehicle if it's needed. We care a lot about autonomous emergency braking, improved pedestrian protection, and you can read also the others. But very important to say, the estimate, not our estimate, the estimate by the contractor that worked for the European Commission is that these measures over a period of 15 years, so from the moment in which they more or less will enter into force in 2022 until 2037, well, if applied, if approved as they were presented by the European Commission, could save at least 25,000 lives, which is an enormous potential. This is why we highly support this proposal from the European Commission. This is why we hope that the Parliament and the Council will approve it, because that needs to be said. The proposal by the European Commission is not enough. The Commission proposes, but then the decision needs to be made by the Council, by the Parliament, and this is what is happening right now. And we're fighting as ETSC to make sure that what has been proposed by the Commission remains as it is without any change. I promised I would say something about intelligent speed assistance. This is not rocket science. This is a technology that you can already buy if you want in many vehicles. And it's actually a system whereby the car with a GPS system or with cameras can recognize the speed limits on any road and help the driver respect those speed limits. I say help because the driver always remains in control. And if there is something that goes wrong, if the speed limit is incorrect, the driver can decide to override that speed limit, can decide to go more quickly by just pressing hard on the accelerator. I said this is a technology that is already there, and actually it can cut the number of road deaths by 20% if it is applied. And pilot studies showed that consumers like it, not least because it helps them avoiding speed fines. This is extremely important to be taken into account. Second of the measures of the third mobility package is the revision of the Infrastructure Safety Management Directive. We'll not say a lot about that because I know there is an extremely interesting presentation from Professor Tollazzi later, and he's the real expert on that, so he will be able to go more on detail. Just, however, a few words. A directive is already in place. These are the instruments that it mandates, but only for the so-called TEN-T networks, that is mainly motorways. And this is the 8% actually. So what we always say, that the old directive is like giving medicine to somebody who is in perfect health. What is important for us is that also those 55% are addressed. So non-10T roads, primary network. And this is what the revision is trying to do, that is extending as much as possible to what they call motorways and primary roads outside the 10T, the same instruments of the Infrastructure Safety Directive. And here again, a life-saving potential for the next decade, again calculated by the experts of the European Commission, very big life-saving potential. We now quickly move on to the two non-legislative parts of the third mobility package. We start with the strategic action plan on road safety. This is very important. It is very important because it sets the framework where the European Commission and the member states will have to work. It asks again for vision zero, a vision, not a target, a vision zero, that in the long term nobody will be killed or seriously injured on the road. It applies the safe system approach. It asks again for targets for deaths and for serious injuries. It introduces key performance indicators and asks for coordination of all sectors, which is extremely important. And last, the strategy on automated driving. More and more you hear about automated driving and even autonomous driving. If you talk to the car industry, they'll tell you, we're ready, we can do it. However, we feel that at least at the European level, there is a lack of regulation on automated and autonomous vehicles. There are no type approval procedures yet. Many of them are introduced just by exception to the current procedure. And these exceptions are very often not transparent, not robust enough to guarantee safety. And this is recognized actually in this paper by the European Commission. We believe that for any deployment of, I don't say autonomous, I say automated driving, so the one in which the driver still has some responsibility, it is important that there are tracks for, tests, like real-world tests, track tests, simulation tests as well, and that the various technologies are approved on a step-by-step basis. We have to end up in a situation in which automated vehicles should, in a way, pass a comprehensive test, a sort of driving test, as the one that drivers pass already now. Certainly, automated vehicles and autonomous vehicles have some benefits. They reduce the chance for human error. I've never seen an autonomous vehicle drink driving or speeding or being distracted, so this is important. They can be a support for high-risk groups, for example, old people who are sometimes obliged to give up driving, and maybe they would not if they were on an autonomous vehicle. However, it's not just positive things. We also have to look at the challenges. New collision types, the interaction between the automated vehicles and the non-automated ones, the interaction with the vulnerable road users who will never be automated, and also in the phases towards full automation, the issue of driver engagement and driver re-engagement. So it is important to look at the future. It is important to look at automated vehicles. It is important to look at autonomous vehicles, but we believe that there is no casualty savings that will emerge from these vehicles anytime beyond 2050, before 2050. We are of the strong opinion that before thinking that anything can be solved by automation, we need to work on measures that can be effective now. The general safety regulation, the vehicles, infrastructure, enforcement, passive safety, because accidents will always happen. That's it from my side. I hope I've managed to give you an overview of all the things that are happening in Brussels and in the various member states. If needed, I'll be available later for any question. Thank you very much.